Hello, Rise of Kingdoms lovers, and it looks like we have a new commander leak, the new Cavalry Garrison commander. Let's find it here. Bam, Eleanor of Aquitaine. Let's go through her skills, see it for the first time, and see if she's going to replace Jan Heraclius as the meta Cavalry Garrison March. Well, first things first, she's got the right talent tree for it, Cavalry Garrison Defense. Let's go through and look at her skills. From what I've seen, there's not much excitement about her just yet. There wasn't any excitement about Belisarius. I will say there wasn't any excitement about Herman either. People thinking Mir, and he's absolutely slapped. So let's see if this lives up to the hype. Let's go through the pictures one by one. Here we go. Commander skills. So her active skill, Lily of the Wild, rage requirement 1000, direct damage to a single target troop. And for the next 10 seconds, this commander's troop takes 10% less skill damage. So it doesn't help her against smite damage. Considering she's Cavalry Garrison, not going to help against the Gorgo, Liu Che rallies, or the Tarek rallies for that matter. So up to 2,300 and up to 10%. Pretty decent skill. I mean, let's go through it and then we'll compare it to Jan and, well, I suppose he's the only real Cavalry Garrison. So we'll compare it to Jan and maybe Bertrand. Second skill, the commander's cavalry units get 20% attack. If this commander is serving as a garrison commander, their garrison takes 15% less counterattack damage. Pretty solid. Again, we'll compare it to Heraclius in a minute, see if it's any better or worse than that. On to the next skills. Here's one I prepared earlier. Rock Crystal Vase, nice meta title. This commander's cavalry units gain 15% defense if the commander is serving as a garrison commander whenever the garrison is hit with a basic attack. Okay, so it does have something against smite, or just normal damage. It has a 10% chance to use the Lily of the Wild skill. Lily of the Wild being, I believe, just check the first one. Yeah. So every time it's hit, it has a really interesting. So it's 1,000 raid requirements, not too much, but you get a chance to proc regularly. Okay, cooldown 10 seconds, so maybe not that regularly. Okay, pretty good. Grandmother of Europe. The commander's troops deals 10% more damage if the commander is serving as a garrison for 3 seconds after their troop uses an active skill. Up to 5 nearby allied or friendly troops. Interesting. Including the commander's troop, gain a 5% bonus to damage dealt. For every allied or friendly troop nearby, excluding this commander's troop, the commander gains an extra 1% boost to damage dealt. It's not big boost, but it is, from the look of it, all damage. And I presume she's definitely a skill damage commander. There's nothing to be mentioned about smite. And so all damage is a massive little bonus if you can get it off. Something as small as 5% really does stack up quick. So there's her skills, and let's look at her expertise ability. Duchess of Aquitaine. The commander's troop takes 5% less damage and deals 10% more skill damage to its current target. Okay, well, if you're going to garrison with her, you obviously need to expertise it, as that is where the true beauty lies here. Obviously, this is a leak, so whether or not it's going to be final is completely up to the developers of Rock. Images, illustration purposes only, in-game content subject to change. Well, we can't really assess her in a vacuum, so let's get Jan up and compare her to Jan Zizka and see who comes out on top here and whether she's going to be the new meta commander for cavalry garrisons. Sadly, we've had to get rid of my face for the comparison bit, which is probably a good thing if you've seen the size of my nose. If we go on then to compare against Zizka. So first things first, Eleanor has cavalry garrison defense. Again, at this stage, it may change, whereas Zizka has cavalry garrison skill. There's obviously a lot of different trees you can run with Zizka. The most common one looks like this. So it's mostly garrison with a tiny bit of skill. Whereas the defense thing for Eleanor makes me think Zizka's, maybe she could be a secondary. I think the skill's probably a little better on the primary garrison commander. You know, it's good to defend, but you kind of got to destroy the rally. And the skill boost, especially from the tree here with the I'm pretty sure that's the fewer rage cost is obviously huge. It means the skill can fire more often. If we move on then to looking at the comparison of the skills. Starting with the active skill, they're very similar in terms of damage factor, Eleanor's has a tiny bit more when she's expertised. She has the skill damage reduction, which I guess makes sense when we pair it with the Eleanor having the defensive tree, whereas Zizka has the skill damage tree and has an additional damage factor. I'm not quite sure which one seems better. They look much of a muchness. I can't imagine there being too much difference between them in terms of efficacy, but we will see, of course. The second one, Sword Hell High. So the cavalry units gain 15% attack, 15% defensive bonus, and 10% skill damage boost. I would say that, I don't know, it's, well, 15% attack and 15% defense is obviously a lot better than 20% attack. Well, it's much better. The 15% less counterattack damage, I think I'd rather have the Zizka skill, to be honest. That 10% skill damage bonus is pretty big. Obviously, we get the skill damage bonus later on for Eleanor. It's not just a like for likeness, but in terms of comparing skill with skill, you'd rather have Sword Held High than Lion Mother here. It's simply got more stats. Despite the counterattack, I would say defense, skill damage, and attack measures up very well against the new Eleanor skills. As I was saying, the Rock Crystal Vase does give that 15% defensive boost that mirrors Zizka's second skill. And for Eleanor, the chance to proc the Lily of the Wild skill, that's only a 10% chance, but like the 10% chance to smash your active skill is really good. Obviously, a 10-second cooldown period isn't great. You're not going to be spamming it throughout the battle with some with nice regularity, but it's a nice little bonus, a decent skill for Eleanor. I do think Zizka again is better. The chance to take 10% less normal damage is decent, but the big thing here, whenever it takes skill damage, has a 50% chance to dispel all normal buffs from the attacker. Interestingly, skill damage, not smite damage. So Zizka's got no real defense against smite damage up until now. Again, if we go back to the previous slide, we'll see that Eleanor mirrors that almost with a 10% skill damage reduction. I would say that the dispelling the buff is slightly better than the skill damage. Like normal buffs, health bonuses, defense bonus, attack bonus to the rallying troops. So the chance to dispel that from the attacker is pretty darn nice indeed. And if we go on to compare the final skill, here's where it gets big. A 20% health bonus for Zizka. And for the Grandmother of York, we have basically a 10% all damage. But I believe this is all damage. I guess we don't know yet. I imagine it is. 10% all damage is huge, let's be honest. 20% health is also huge. We don't have to have a winner here. They're both excellent skills. For this, for Eleanor, the commander service, the garrison commander, after the troop using active skill, it does buff nearby units, which is interesting. I'm trying to think of which structures defending that has a good benefit to. Not really the passes. I guess flagged, when it's a big old flag fight, that makes perfect sense and it's going to be really beneficial. And it gives a nice little bonus to Eleanor when other troops are fighting nearby. It's almost similar to the Belisarius, and it might be indicative of where cavalry is going on this game. Infantry is going down the smite route, archers going down the massive damage route, and cavalry is going down the surrounding units to get extra buff. Okay, we're thinking of flag fights, maybe fortress battles, certainly not going to be applicable for pass fights. You wouldn't have thought so anyway, because with pass fights, you're just refilling the rally and refilling the garrisons. You don't really have much open field fighting aside from that. We'll see how valuable that actually is. We compare it to the Jan Zizka skill again. Yeah, Zizka gets 20% health, and whenever it launches a basic attack, has a 10% chance to gain a 20% bonus to normal damage. Very different ones here. Zizka seem, well, a mixture of defensiveness and attacking prowess on Zizka, whereby on Eleanor here we have the damage only. We're doing 10% more damage, which is huge, and extra damage to everything, which is interesting when we consider that Eleanor has the defense skill and Zizka has the skill tree. It seems a little bit all over the place in a sense. Anyway, let's go on to the expertise. On the expertise front, let's be honest, Eleanor craps all over Zizka. Zizka's just boosts his active skills 2400, take it above Eleanor's, admittedly, and doing some damage to nearby enemy troops for pitiful damage, to be honest. Whereas Eleanor's got a 5% bonus to, well, takes 5% less damage and 10% more skill damage. I mean, Eleanor's is fantastic there, whereas Zizka's just a nice little benefit of the other one. So, comparison, conclusion. You look at them and they've both got, like, it's not really an apples to apples comparison. It's more of an English euphemism, apples to oranges, which means comparing two different things. We've got two commanders here who do the same thing quite differently. They both have attacking boosts, they both have defensive boosts. Looking at the two of them, you don't immediately think, oh, well, Eleanor's fantastic. She completely replaces Zizka. She certainly seems okay. I wouldn't look at her and think, wow, Zizka's out of it now. Like, our last KBK, Zizka Heraclius was a beast garrison. Everywhere it was. Admittedly, I was running archers. There is that. But every time I fought against that, I thought, oh, here we go. Gorgo's another one, I think, oh, here we go. Even with archers. But I don't look at this immediately and think, Zizka's gone. It looks to me like, well, we're going to need to see a lot of testing. Because as with Belisarius Prime, no one's excited about it. But you never know. You never know when it comes in the game what changes for one thing, and secondly, what just performs better than it looks. Until we actually see it in game, we're just pissing in the wind and speculating. So I'd be interesting to see if we could get the two lined up as a garrison pair. I would imagine that Zizka would be primary with the skill tree, which is better than the defense tree, I think, for the garrison, somewhat counterintuitively, but again, you've got to deal damage, and Zizka does that in abundance. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. I would say Eleanor seems pretty good. Nothing to complain about there. But maybe, as I was saying, a Zizka-Eleanor tree could be, a Zizka-Eleanor pairing replacing Zizka Heraclius could be interesting. We shall see, though. Certainly decent. I would say any more than decent? I'd say she looks better than Belisarius does for the role she's going to fill, but maybe not much. Again, maybe things will change when she comes into the game, but for now, we can only wait and see and be moderately excited. I think moderately excited is the right word. I mean, you look at Ashurbanipal, you look at Zug when they came out, and you would just think, oh, wow, these guys are fantastic. These are obviously going to be the new meta. And of course they were. You don't look at Eleanor and think, oh, she's the new meta. Let's all regret crafting Zizka. But we shall see, my friends. Let me know in the comments what you think. Hope you've enjoyed this sneak peek, which is subject to change. If you want to subscribe to the channel, helps me out tremendously. I'd be very much appreciative. We usually do a lot of free-to-play videos here, but it's nice to do something different. So I'll see you next time when we see Eleanor in game and how she actually compares to what her stats look like on paper. Ciao for now.